my name is Megan Elizabeth Drake and I am here to talk you through my PF2000 module at the University of Central Lancashire, focusing on particularly the second semester, wherein which I have collaborated with second years and first years on my course to create a piece of devised performance. Our original proposal in January, which was prior to the workshop which we held with the first years, stated that we were interested in looking into the ideas of hidden illnesses and how it affects the body and the mind. Within this, we were interested at looking how the voices in the mind and how the illnesses can be personified. For this, we were looking into manipulation of the body as well as mask work. We will also be exploring all three areas of performance: visual, body and textual performance, and our main influences being Antonin Artaud and Sarah Kane. The interest in the mask work had come from the idea that it helped to separate the body from the performer, as well as serving as a metaphor for hiding away the illnesses. Using body manipulation, we also aim to explore the ways in which the illnesses can change the way the body works. Now, our workshop with the first years followed the proposals back in January, wherein which we selected 2 of the 3 first years who came to attend. I originally intended on working with 2 other second years who are also in my class. However, due to circumstances within our class, we ended up with another second year. So we had 4 second years and 2 first years. One of these second years, however, decided to stick back and work on the tech instead, as that is his area of expertise. So within our workshop, we decided to set up 3 different exercises, which involved a text exercise wherein which the students wrote text personifying different illnesses. For example, we had one of the students personify arthritis, the other one hallucinations, one of them split personality, and another one social anxiety. All of these were creative, however, some of them needed to be a little bit more personified. The second exercise which we ran was a manipulation exercise, wherein which we worked together in pairs to manipulate each other's bodies and move each other around the space. An example of this would be one partner would stick their hand up and the other would follow that hand around the space, going up, down, exploring all sorts of levels, being on the floor, being up quite high. This then developed into following it with other parts of the body. For example, the leader would use their elbow, which would then be followed by their partner's knee, for example. We found that the first years worked incredibly well together, as well as with the other second years throughout this exercise. Overall, all four students, including the student who we had from the second year, who was just purely a performer as opposed to a director, worked incredibly well together. However, there was one where the text was a lot weaker than the others, as well as the actual physical movement. So from this, we selected the 2 students who we worked with, who were both working incredibly well together, and they're both incredibly creative and very focused throughout the workshop. Our first supervision came before our first rehearsal. This was the Tuesday following our workshops. This involves a tutor sitting into our rehearsal and assessing it throughout the hour that we have with the tutor. At the end of every supervision, we received feedback. So, for example, a few notes from our first supervision were things like the first years not being relaxed enough with us, the dynamic of the group needing to be addressed, using the whole space for the exercises that we did, as well as making sure the first years do feel part of the group. However, we did also receive positive feedback. For example, the text exercises were nicely orchestrated and the text that was generated was really nice and clear. Our first rehearsal then proceeded to start on the 6th of February. The video footage which you're seeing now is from the 6th of February, wherein which we got the performers to just move about the space, focus on their breathing, focus on moving about the space in a creative yet relaxed way, almost as if they're completely drained of energy, which links to this idea of mental illnesses such as depression, borderline personality disorder, anorexia, for example, wherein which the body is physically drained of energy. For our first showings on the 28th of February, we sat on the staging that you see here, however that was later changed. We decided to start with text being read, with the performers on the stage in a tableau, mimicking a hospital with things like family, nurses, patients, etc., mixing together both physical and mental illnesses, and the text correlating to how they feel. For example, it's excruciating pain, making me feel trapped, like I am no longer here. This later was changed to what you have just seen in the video previous to this. We figured it was more interesting to personify the thoughts and feelings of the emotions that come with these illnesses as opposed to the illness themselves. The week leading up to first showings was our rehearsal week, for which our rehearsal schedule was altered ever so slightly to Mondays 7 till 10, Tuesdays 3 till 5, Wednesdays 12 till 3, Thursdays 10 till 12, and then Saturday and Sunday 1 till 4 and 4 till 6 respectively, if they were needed, which they weren't. This later became our set rehearsal through the rest of the process up until the performance day.
It's a darkness that may be fading your speech from me. I just knew that word.
It's a twang in your chest, that sudden burst of ice coursing through your veins, delving into every crevice of your soul, as if it's been paralysed by sheer terror. The anxiety and adrenaline rages to destroy every rational thought and sends visions of corruption through your eyes. It feels almost as if you've gone insane. As your blood curdles, a minuscule droplet of a fever dream cleanse your body of all rationality and sends your body, mind, heart and soul into overdrive. Petrified would be an understatement for what this bath of adrenaline truly is.
With our process leading up to first showings, we did a series of exercises which involved using little bits of paper that had different disorders and illnesses written on them. We set up this idea of a hospital in which someone would come in. We'd come in one by one, look at the piece of paper, see what was written on it, put it back down, face down on the table, and then begin to personify that, mixing text in every now and then, but focusing mainly on the physical movements and how we could portray it physically through interacting with each other, interacting with the space, and through what we did physically. The next 2 months leading up to the final performance, we stopped looking at this idea of mental illness and hidden illness and started focusing on purely emotions and how we can portray them physically through movement and also through text. However, some of the feedback that we got from first showings was to have the text delivered in the space, as well as to keep Jay, who is the technician for the show instead of actually in the performances. That is his area of expertise, as I mentioned previously. So the months leading up to first showings, we started looking more into Gecko Theatre Company as well as Frantic Assembly, mainly to see how they correlate physical movement to just everyday life through pedestrian movement, as well as intertwine it with text, which we began focusing in on for our final performance. As we started looking mainly into Frantic Assembly, we started creating this idea of making a story through physicality, looking at creating this whole narrative kind of thing. We decided to look at a social situation, so for example the emotions and whatnot that can be experienced through a social situation, such as meeting up with friends. For this we created a list of emotions that can be experienced in social situations, such as happiness, anxiety, unrequited love, being outcasted, being in love, and platonic friendship. We also looked at this idea of the stereotypical ideas of each person of a social group. For example, you tend to have the alpha, who's the leader of the group, the glue, who is the one who supports everyone, the comedian, the outcast, the angry one, and the ones in a relationship. From this we selected this idea of the lad, or the alpha, the supportive friend, and the outcast, and the ones in a relationship, focusing on anxiety, unrequited love, and jealousy. We looked mainly into the fact that the supportive friend usually ends up buckling under the weight of everyone else's problems, which is where we then came up with the idea of using trust falls through now with the emotions. We also looked at this idea of a chair sequence. We developed this from a task wherein which we had 3 chairs between 5 people, and the chairs had to be filled at any one point. So there was always 3 people sat down and always 2 people standing up. We created this movement motif based around this and developed it further and took it more into this social situation. This was mainly inspired by Frantic Assembly. our final supervision, we got the note saying that we needed to extend a few parts, add text to the party scene, extending that scene as well. We also got told other little things like bringing the chairs forward, making the greeting scene more creative and more adventurous. We developed in terms of risk, as you've just seen with the lift that we just did, and to just extend on all the scenes in general. We were also told to look further into phonetic assembly and their narrative language and their behaviour. We were also told to develop relationships early on, hence the reason as to why we left the duets from first showings in between Liam and Jack and myself and Kyle, as this brings up this idea of jealousy as well as being in a relationship. With the help scenes, the falling and catching, as explained previously, we decided to use this as a metaphor for the idea of the supportive friend. We actually created the order of falling through a randomized number generator. So we gave each person who fell a number, and we put in the generator the numbers between 1 and 4, and we kept generating numbers until everyone had fallen at least 4 times. So the final order seemed random, however it wasn't. This purely was for us to know that who was falling at what point, and for Kyle to know who was going to be falling next, so he could make sure that he was there on time to avoid any accidents. The main reasoning behind the majority of the movements purely were to just look at how we could create physical movement while portraying certain emotions. So for example, with being in a relationship, you've got the support, you've got the love and the support there, hence this idea of a lot of lift work to show this support, and the coming to a mutual agreement as well to us doing the same thing opposite people. For example, in the duet that I did with Liam, which you're about to see, we kept the centre of the stage clear to keep that as the middle ground, per se, that people come into where they make the agreements and settle things between them. The performance could have gone better had we stuck to the original proposal more, if not thought prior how well we could have developed on this idea of mental health and hidden illnesses. So I personally feel, looking back on it now, that it was an incredibly I feel it was a big idea that would be hard to develop on and hard to create a full 15-20 minute piece out of. which is why we struggled and ended up looking at this idea of emotions instead, as it was just easier to then display this through a narrative with this idea of looking at this idea of relationships and the thoughts and feelings within this. Stephen, in the end, didn't have a big role within the performance. This was due mainly to his strengths being mainly in the tech side of performance. So he helped Jay with the soundtrack and the lighting and whatnot. There was also a few issues and hiccups with him being late to rehearsals, missing rehearsals, not being available due to personal reasons. So we began just rehearsing without him and creating scenes without him in it, which is where we ended up just focusing mainly on Liam, Kyle and Jack and myself, while Jay and Stephen focused mainly on the tech, with Stephen still being an active performer within the performance itself. If I was to come back to doing a performance like this, I personally would look more into artists and actually do some full research into them, as I didn't do much research into them other than watching videos online on YouTube to see how they went through each exercise, as well as taking advice from tutors. I would look more into exercises online and in books as well to help develop physical language and the ideas of and the psychology behind emotions and relationships as well. I personally feel I didn't do much research at all in this process, and I focused mainly on actually just developing something through improvisation and through just looking at this idea that we had. The final performance in the end didn't have many hiccups at all. The only issues that we had was with the UV light that was on throughout the performance. This was because we had teched our show before the UV light had been rigged in and before they had been able to turn the UV light off throughout the performance, so we ended up with the UV light on. If we were to go back to do this again, we would definitely have to re-tack the show once the UV light had been put in to avoid any unnecessary light, which we ended up having with things like shoelaces glowing and the whites of the shorts that were under my dress glowing as well. All of that could have been avoided had we just re-tacked the show beforehand.